This is Tim McCall with CTV News here in Laramie, Wyoming, Sports Authority Field at Mile High Stadium. We're here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, the Beehive State. Here in Logan, it's game day. Hello again, Rams fans. I am Tim McCall here with Sydney Wicker, and we are excited to be back for another semester, ready to keep you updated with all the latest and greatest going on in the world of sports. Without further delay, let's get started. The CSU men's basketball team suffered a tough 79-74 loss to conference rival UNLV at Moby Arena this Saturday. The loss dropped the Rams to 10-11 on the season and 3-5 in Mountain West play. The Rams were without their top scorer, Prentice Nixon, who was out with an ankle injury that he suffered versus Air Force last week. The team adapted well without Nixon in the lineup and held the lead for the majority of the second half. However, UNLV proved to be too much for the shorthanded Rams down the stretch and pulled away with the use of a 14-0 run during the last 3 minutes and 42 seconds of the game. Junior guard J.D. Page was perhaps the player who stepped up most in the absence of Nixon. His 19 points on the day led the Rams. Raekwon Mitchell and Deion James scored 17 and 14 points respectively. This trio will likely have to continue to pick up the slack as speculation around Nixon's injury suggests that he may miss an extended amount of time. Later on, I will be joined by CSU men's basketball reporter Brian Buck to discuss the outlook for the Rams should the speculation about the severity of Nixon's ankle injury prove to be true. Next for the Rams, they will travel to California to battle San Diego State this Wednesday. The Rams will be looking to even the season series after the Aztecs defeated the Rams 77-68 in their first meeting. The game will be televised on CBS Sports and will tip off at 9 p.m.
In women's basketball news, the Colorado State women's basketball team was able to take a trip down to Las Vegas on Saturday where they battled the UNLV Lady Rebels. The Rams were down by 13 points at the half and were able to bring the fourth quarter to a back-and-forth battle. Unfortunately, the Rams were unable to finish the game and lost 56-52. Steen Oskulin was the leading scorer for the Rams, where she had 3 three-pointers and 17 total points. The women's basketball team next takes on San Diego State on Wednesday at 7 in Moby Arena.
In further basketball news, yesterday it was announced that both men's and women's basketball will be debuting their state pride uniforms in the coming days. Women's basketball will wear their state pride uniforms in Moby Arena this Saturday, January 27th against New Mexico. The men's team will wear the new fits on January 31st against the Wyoming Cowboys. The state pride uniforms, which are produced by Under Armour, will closely resemble the state pride uniforms that the Rams football team wore against the Boise State Broncos this season. Don't miss out on your chance to watch the CSU Rams wear their special edition State Pride uniforms this season.
On Friday, the CSU indoor track team raced against the Air Force Academy team, where Jalen Hunter, Marybeth Saint, and Mackenzie Wright posted top 5 marks in their events. Hunter ran the 60-meter hurdles, where he placed second and beat his personal best time of 7:98 in the finals. Hunter now ranks 32nd in the nation. Saint was able to bring the Rams to the best time of their meet in the finals, where she had 7:47 in the 60 meters and 7:53 in the preliminaries. She matched her indoor best, which ranks 5th in CSU's all-time history. And in the women's high jump, Wright had an indoor best of 5:9.75, where she was able to place 3rd. The indoor track team will compete again this weekend at the Air Force Academy for the Air Force Invitational. The CSU tennis team started off their season on Saturday, where they took on the Colorado Buffaloes at home. The team went 3-4 and were unable to win, but were able to see how much they were capable of with such a young team. Freshman Emily Luschswager and sophomore Riley Reeves dueled CU's number 2 ranked doubles pair and were able to come away with a win 6-2. The CSU women's tennis team will be headed to Wisconsin to take on the Badgers on Saturday.
That young Rams tennis team will look to bounce back after a tough early season struggle and will look to fight and to secure their first winning season since 2005. We're going to take a quick break right here, but when we come back, I will be joined by CSU men's basketball reporter Brian Buck to talk about the severity of Prentice Nixon's injury.
They said I couldn't dream. Called me a piece of trash and swore that's all I'd ever be. Said a bottle couldn't see the ocean. Give up. Go back to the dumpster. But I didn't listen. I made my way. And now, I am what I've always wanted to be.
I am joined now by CSU men's basketball reporter Brian Buck, who has followed the team closely this whole season. Brian, let me ask you, just what type of player is Prentice Nixon, and what does he mean to the CSU team? We did just mention that he did get hurt last week. It looks like it's a high ankle sprain. What are the Rams going to be missing while he's gone?
Well, they're going to miss two things mainly. First and foremost is scoring. Prentice Nixon leads this team, averaging just under 18 points a game, and that's going to hurt them a lot. A basketball team that has had rough offensive stretches all season long is going to be painful for them to recover from. But the other big thing that they're missing is experience. This is a team that head coach Larry Eustachy has talked about all year as being a team that he thinks is the most inexperienced and just very young and immature team he's had in his entire career. And Prentice Nixon is the most mature and the most experienced guy on this basketball team. So to not have him is tough for them. We saw it Saturday afternoon when they were up 9 points with 3.5 minutes to go, and they seemingly allowed a 14-0 run to UNLV in crunch time and lost the basketball game. And that's what they're missing, is scoring and experience.
You know, it's hard to say, but I just don't see that same type of run by UNLV happening with Prentice Nixon in the game. 3 minutes and 42 seconds without scoring for the Rams, Prentice Nixon would definitely help that. Now, let me ask you, what do you think of the Rams? How are we going to see the Rams' game plan change now that Prentice Nixon's not in the lineup?
Well, I think it actually benefits them in some ways, which is really interesting to see. J.D. Page, after the game against UNLV, said, when I asked him about Nico Carvacci's rebounding, he said they lean on everybody on the basketball team, even guys who don't get minutes, even guys who don't see the court, who just have time in practice. They trust them to be, whether it's mental support or practice support, they lean on everybody. And the way I hear that is when you lean on everybody, you're leaning on nobody. They've been leaning hard on Prentice Nixon all season long. And we saw this offense kind of change shape Saturday afternoon when Prentice Nixon wasn't on the court. They weren't leaning on anybody. Natural scoring was coming. We saw Raquan Mitchell step up and have 17 shots, and he put up a fair number of points for them. J.D. Page was working well. Everybody seemed to flow a little bit better, and I think without one main guy, they're going to be able to kind of grow this offense a little bit better and grow into what they're more comfortable doing.
Now, with that type of adjustment, where they're going to be, getting used to everybody on the floor rather than just Prentice Nixon, do you think that's going to have any type of effect on the team if Prentice Nixon winds up coming back later in the year? Are they going to get out of a funk, out of their game plan once he comes back into the lineup?
Well, that's what I'm really excited about. Is I don't think that will happen, because once they've all learned what they're able to do, a lot of young guys whose first season it is with CSU, Deion James, Raquan Mitchell, J.D. Page, this is his first season as a starter and a star performer. All these guys are going to understand what their role is and can be when they have more time and more ability to do things. And once Prentice comes back, I think it'll just be a transition of, okay, how much time are each one of these guys going to get, but they know what to do with that time. So it'll be comfortable. There will be a little bit of growing pains for maybe a game or two, but I think overall we'll see this team be a lot more efficient offensively because everybody understands what they're supposed to do a little bit better.
And going forward for the rest of the season in the Mountain West, how do you think the Rams are going to shape out the rest of the year?
Well, it's going to be a tough season, and the schedule doesn't help them at all. The next 4 basketball games are against teams that are in the top half of the conference, including Nevada, who's one of the top teams in the country. They actually received a lot of votes in the AP poll this year, and they're undefeated in conference so far. That's coming up. The next 2 games that they have are road stretches against San Diego State, who they've already lost to this season, and New Mexico, a very good basketball team who's 5-3 in conference. And not to mention you're throwing in a Wyoming game in there. That's also a very good team, and we beat them once this year, but it's tough to beat a team 2 times in the same season. And when you have a schedule like that, it's really easy to snowball and get lost in yourself. And Prentice Nixon hopefully comes back and helps us grow. but at the same time, you could easily see a team start to fall into the toilet and not figure out how to get their heads above water.
Now, it's always difficult when you see a star player like Prentice Nixon get hurt for your team. However, I do think that, like you said, this is kind of going to force the CSU Rams to mature quicker than they otherwise would have, which I think is a silver lining in this injury going forward. I think Larry Usadisi is definitely the guy you want man of the ship in this type of situation. So we're going to take another break, but we'll be back in just a second with the FoCo Sports Show. Don't go anywhere, Rams.
Well, Thomas, you've got pre-diabetes. But with more exercise and a change in diet, it can be reversed.
I've tried exercising. It just makes me hungry for bacon.
I love bacon, too. And who really likes to exercise?
Not me.
Me neither.
Nobody. So we're good?
What? Oh, you still have pre-diabetes. Big time.
Okay, so we drowned the fire.
Yep.
Stirred it. Drowned it again, and now just feel if it's cold.
Yeah.
Cool.
Smokey just gave me a bear hug.
I know. I already posted it.
You are listening to 90.5 KCSU Fort Collins with DJ Meanbeef,
DJ Nightshade,
DJ Wildcard. Music to me is
one of the best creative outlets that I can think of.
An escape from the real world.
Music to me is an expression of love.
To go from like folk to hip hop to like classic rock, 1960s bossa nova. With music, there's like no boundaries.
I work here because I love music, and you do too.
They told me a bottle couldn't dream. That I would never become a superhero. But I learned how to fly. Just to come back in a new disguise and be the hero that I've always wanted to be.
Look at you. You're at the top of your game. You're unstoppable. Nothing can throw you off track. Wait, is that your car? Uh-oh. Yeah, I saw that coming. That will throw you off track. You're looking at around 10 grand in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. Let's try this again. Smart move. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
Okay, so we drowned the fire.
Yep.
Stirred it. Drowned it again. And now just feel if it's cold.
Yeah.
Cool.
Smokey just gave me a bear hug.
I know. I already posted it.
Listen, I realize that I'm not perfect, but it all really started to change because you judge me for having a problem. No one is going to know that I need help. I need help. I know that no one is going to judge me for having a problem. I realize that I'm not perfect, but it all really started to change because you listen.
Hello and welcome back to the FoCo Sports Show. You know, it's been a whole semester and I missed you guys, but just in case anybody forgot, I am Tim McCall. Let's go around and introduce ourselves, guys.
I'm Nick Baker from KCSU.
I'm Brian Buck, also from KCSU.
I'm Javon Harris from the Collegian.
Nick Romero with CTV Sports.
So yesterday was the NFC and AFC championship games, and everyone was chomping at the bit to, talk about football for this show. But we're going to hold off on the Super Bowl because that's not for another 2 weeks. But coming up for football fans, we do have the Pro Bowl. Yeah. So what we are going to talk about is the biggest Pro Bowl snubs of the season. Guys that you think should have made it into the Pro Bowl but didn't wind up making it in. Any of you guys want to start with somebody you got?
Yeah, I got a crazy one. In the last 3 years, no Bears have made it to the Pro Bowl. And Jordan Howard is the only one that I think is deserving every single year of it. You can make a case for a few of them each year. But Jordan Howard is a big snub. They didn't do great this year. But what offense they did have came from almost entirely Jordan Howard and then a little bit of Tariq Cohen. All the rushing game, he's not there. Trubisky doesn't develop whatsoever. They have no offense whatsoever.
No, you look. Chicago wound up getting a huge win against a really good Pittsburgh Steelers team earlier in the year, and it wasn't as much of the Bears beating the Steelers as it was Jordan Howard beating the Steelers. He is really valuable to that team, and only in his second year, he's only going to get better. I think that even though he didn't make the Pro Bowl last year, didn't make the Pro Bowl this year, we are going to see him in the Pro Bowl at some point in the future.
Oh, you've got to.
He's easily one of the most underrated backs, probably players in the NFL right now. My guy also on offense has got to be the guy who led the NFL in receptions and didn't get a Pro Bowl spot. Jarvis Landry of the Miami Dolphins. 112 catches, and you don't get a spot in the Pro Bowl? That doesn't make sense to me. Regardless of how his team performed, because the Pro Bowl doesn't have anything to do with that, regardless of who's throwing him the football, because we can all argue that there are some better quarterbacks throwing some of the guys who did make the Pro Bowl balls. 112 balls. That should be a Pro Bowl regardless of who.
You should be in the Pro Bowl.
Yeah, Jarvis Landry's whole career, he's been underrated. Let's not forget, Jarvis Landry has played 4 years in the NFL, and he has exactly 400 career receptions. This guy's averaging 100 receptions per season going into his, this is his contract year. I got to imagine he's going to get paid, and I think you're absolutely right. It's amazing that he didn't make the Pro Bowl.
112 catches, and not only is that a great number, but he had 1have catches with Jay Cutler. Not to say Jay Cutler's bad. And not more.
You got to say that.
That is not a great quarterback group throwing you footballs, and have 112 receptions when those guys are throwing you the football. That's something, and you should get. You almost feel like you should get bonus points for that.
He should be in a commercial with like a text to donate for this poor guy. I'm sorry you had Matt Moore as your quarterback for a sizable portion of the season.
And I'm not going to say that Antonio Brown doesn't deserve to be in there, but Antonio Brown has been Roethlisberger throwing him the football. And had fewer catches than Jarvis Landry.
Taking looks away from him.
Other great receivers on the team, too. Jarvis Landry, he's got good receivers. Kenny Stills is on the same team as he is, and he's still getting 112 catches with that quarterbacking group. That's a snub.
Well, to piggyback some of that, Leonard Fournette this season was so valuable for the Jaguars. He led them to the playoffs, and he's a rookie. We get that, but his season was outstanding. I think he should have made it. But, obviously, Jaguars probably didn't want to make the Pro Bowl because, they want to make the Super Bowl in that sense. But going forward, he should have an amazing career with the Jaguars. They're young; they should be good going forward.
You look at a guy like Leonard Fournette, and I think his value is really underrated until you take into context Blake Bortles. All year people are saying Blake Bortles, this guy is not a good quarterback. He doesn't deserve to get a contract at the end of the year. And his whole career has kind of been up and down. But he gets a reliable running game for the first time in his career, and they're able to ride Leonard Fournette so that Blake Bortles can be comfortable in an NFL game and can control the game and win it. Blake Bortles doesn't necessarily have to win the games if Leonard Fournette is running the ball 30 times like he was.
Well, and then like we were talking with Brian, Kenny Stills taking away looks from Jarvis Landry and still getting 112 catches. Chris Ivory and T.J. Yeldon are both on the Jaguars, and Leonard Fournette still put up a 1,000-yard season with two other starter caliber
And that was with
backs.
Leonard Fournette missing a few games.
Yes, 3 games.
He missed 3 games and still rushed for 1,000 yards. I would have to agree with you, Javon. He's a guy that I was really surprised that we're not going to be seeing playing in the Pro Bowl next weekend.
Exactly.
My pick, it's a guy that I feel like most Colorado can get behind, is going to be Chris Harris Jr. Looking at just the Pro Bowl caliber defense that the Broncos have had this year with Aqib Talib, Bradley Roby. Chris Harris Jr. is one of those special guys on that defense where he's probably the most versatile out of the three. You can put him outside, you can put him in the slot, and he's a lockdown corner. Yeah. Like, just because he's not getting targeted as much, he's not getting as many picks or as many bat downs or blocked passes as, say, Aqib Talib. I think he should definitely be in the Pro Bowl. He's been to the last 3 Pro Bowls, and his last season has been on par with the last 3 years as well.
I think he's a victim of team play.
Yeah.
The Jaguars got 2 guys in A.J. Bouye and Jalen Ramsey, who both deserve to be in there. And Chris Harris deserves to be in there as well. But you can make the argument that because the Jaguars were so successful as a defense, set a lot of records and compared to a lot of the best defenses we've ever seen, whereas the Broncos had some games like against the Eagles where they allowed 50 points. Right. And that makes the entire group, and specifically some players, look a little bit worse. Chris Harris is deserving, but sometimes when you're playing defense, a tough mark like allowing 50 points in a game comes back to hurt you a little bit. But I do agree Chris Harris definitely deserves
One of the things that kind of freaks me out is Aqib Talib made it. And, you know, you hear Aqib Talib's name the whole game, and it's because the quarterbacks are choosing to throw to him because they don't want to throw to Chris Harris. So if you're going to pick one, it should be Chris Harris.
Now, for my Pro Bowl snub, I'm actually going to go a little bit quieter. A lot of guy that people don't know about. Everyone knows who Travis Kelce is, the all-pro tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs, but not many people know his brother, Jason Kelce, who is the center for the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, if you watch game film on the Philadelphia Eagles, they're running the ball all the time, and they're running a lot of sweeps. And what's impressive about Jason Kelce is he is used as a pulling center. He snaps the ball, even if it's under center or shotgun, and he pulls to the outside rather than having a guard do that. You know, the Eagles were 3rd in the NFL in rushing yards this year, and I think that a huge part of that is because they were able to secure the outside with Jason Kelce. Now, that's nothing against Alex Mack, who wound up being the Pro Bowl starter for the NFC. He's from the Falcons. I think he's great, but I think Jason Kelce meant more to his team's game plan and contributed more to the team being successful than Alex Mack did, and for that reason, I think he's probably my biggest Pro Bowl snub this season.
He was also a very important part of what's arguably the best offensive line in the NFL now. Coming into the season, we were saying it's the Raiders and the Cowboys and everybody else when it comes to the offensive line. And now we're saying it's the Eagles, and we're not really sure who else is decent anymore. And Jason Kelce's one of the prime reasons why we shifted that opinion.
Well, and the center really is the captain of the offensive line. And, you know, that offensive line was able to take some running backs. There was a lot of injuries. And, you know, Wendell Smallwood and people just coming up and having good
Clement,
Corey,
exactly.
Jay Ajayi coming in, not knowing the system, and they were able to get them good games. That's 100% on the line. A running back needs that.
So, football fans, if you haven't seen Jason Kelce play this year and you don't understand how good he is for the Super Bowl, come to watch, see how much he is pulling to the outside. It really is impressive to see how athletic this big center is. So we're going to stay on the football topic, but we're going to bring it a little bit closer to home, and we're going to talk about the Denver Broncos. The season is over for the Broncos, and a rebuild seems to be underway. They have the 5th pick in the draft coming up this year, and it's going to be a really important pick for John Elway. Where do you guys see them going, and what's the most important need that they need to address?
Well, they also have pick number 37, and that's important to me because the quarterback need is pressing. And while they can go to free agency, you know, it's going to be hard-pressed for them to not take a quarterback. There's going to be a lot of pressure. But taking one in the top 5, there's so many options. I think they should address another need, you know, something, you know, maybe a receiver, a running back, something else that is a little more sparse in the draft, and then get whatever quarterback's left with their second-round pick.
You know, we talked about pick 37. You know, a lot of the mock drafts that I've been seeing have Michael Gallup going in the second round. Perhaps that number 37 pick slots well for Michael Gallup, and he stays at home. That would be really cool.
Receiver depth's an issue.
The Broncos a lot.
It would. A guy I like, pick 37. Totally agree with you, Nick. That's a very important slot for the Broncos. And however they acquire a quarterback, they do need to acquire one. But I think that number 4 spot's not the way to go about it. The Broncos have drafted a lot of quarterbacks in recent years, and we've seen a lot of teams perform rebuilds, like the Jaguars, who were very successful this year, other teams who don't prioritize a quarterback and let one come to them, whether it's in free agency, later rounds in the draft. They prioritize other positions. I think a great position to prioritize for the Broncos right now is running back. This is a team that was very successful when C.J. Anderson was running the ball this year. And while they might not have won games, we're playing really good games. And when C.J. Anderson wasn't running the ball well, when he wasn't getting a lot of touches, things were going really bad for this Broncos team. So at the number 4 spot, I love Saquon Barkley. I think he's a clear caliber NFL running back. He's going to make an impact in the NFL. He's going to be successful. He does everything well. He pass blocks well. He has a stout lower body that reminds me a lot of Marshawn Lynch. And he makes a lot of really nice plays. And if the Broncos can trust a running back and they can go back to trusting this defense, we didn't really trust as much this year, but I think is still the same defense it has been in the past few seasons. A running game and a defense has been a formula for success for a lot of football teams in the past few years.
Jaguars
and that's the Jaguars this year. The Seahawks won a Super Bowl a couple of years ago with it. That's
when your offense is able to control the ball and they're able to keep possession, and that defense can stay off the field and rest, they're going to be so much more rejuvenated every time they step out on the field.
That's a quick formula for we can take our time developing a quarterback instead of rushing all these young guys in and kind of putting them through the fire and coming out scorched on the other end.
And they've got the guys that can help space out that running game. In the passing attack, they've got a lot of great tight ends: Heuerman and Derby and Jake Budd even, and Demaryius Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders. The kind of guys that you don't want to count on for an offense, but spacing it out for a run, perfect.
Yep.
And as much as I would love to see Saquon Barkley on the Broncos, even though I'm not a Broncos fan, that would be so great. I think they do need a quarterback. I don't think Simeon or Lynch or Osweiler did anything this year for the Broncos at all. And I think who I would like, and who I know Tim would like, is I think Josh Allen. You got to go Josh Allen. He's from Wyoming. He's up the street. He's a big quarterback. Big hands, like you said that one time.
Yeah, it's well documented on this show that I definitely like Josh Allen. I think he's probably the strongest quarterback prospect in this draft, and I would love it if the Broncos got him.
Me too.
He played in the famous Idaho Potato Bowl and absolutely lit it up. And who was on the sideline watching him that game, up close and personal? John Elway.
Exactly.
If Josh Allen is available at number 5 when the Broncos pick, I don't expect John Elway to overlook him. I think he's going to grab him.
And I agree. I think that.
What worries me about Josh Allen, though, and I agree with Tim, I think he's the best quarterback prospect this year, is the history and the track record of the Broncos and drafting quarterbacks.
Like Paxton Lynch.
Paxton Lynch, they seem to mishandle them.
Exactly.
They don't give them the same kind of confidence. And you have to let your backup, let your rookie show you when he's prepared instead of deciding that he's prepared, deciding he needs to make an entrance. We saw it last year with Deshaun Watson and Tom Savage. Tom Savage wasn't playing well. Deshaun Watson clearly showed them something in practice, and they said, okay, Deshaun, here's your chance now, starting in week 2. And he went out and performed. Now, whether it's early on that you give your quarterback a chance because he shows you something early, or you have him develop, like, say, Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay, where he had a lot of time under Brett Favre. Quarterbacks are going to show you and tell you when it's their turn to take over. And sometimes it's a little bit less clear than that, but just throwing guys under the fire, kind of like how they did with Paxton Lynch or Trevor Siemian, it feels rough.
And
it doesn't work.
Do you think it's more
what
like
the Browns have been doing for 20 years?
Both Paxton Lynch and Trevor Siemian would be great backup quarterbacks, but they were thrust in so quickly that their careers are almost over because of it.
Their confidence is shot.
Completely. No one wants to take a bite on him because they know he's never going to start a game. If he had a couple years to be, one of the top, one of the best backups, he would have been great.
Now, Nick, we just have one more minute remaining. Is there any quick word you want to add in with where you think the Broncos are going to head?
This is just kind of a wild card, but I got to go Baker Mayfield. I got to take the Heisman.
Hey, I like that.
Me too.
Honestly, I think he's going to add just the kind of fire and attitude that the Broncos offense has been lacking for the last couple of years since Manning left.
He would bring a lot of excitement back to the city of Denver.
I would be a
football.
Bronco fan. I don't even like the Broncos. So.
You have enough fire on the defense. The offense really doesn't have much. DT's getting old. He doesn't have the same kind of fire in him. I feel like this is exactly the spark that we need to kind of get this ball
going.
Guys, a running game, too.
I hate I'm going to have to cut you off. We are running out of time. That's all we have for our first edition of the FoCo Sports Show tonight. We will see you next week. See you, Rams.